A standardized test is where a child sits down and takes a comprehension test on everything that they've learned in a certain subject, whether it's math, reading, or social studies. Have you yourself ever felt let down or ashamed because you never passed these tests? Well, I can definitely relate because I've only passed about 4 or 5 from the time that I was 9 years old to 15. And that's not very many. Back in elementary school, how I felt, I can't even begin to describe to you what that was like. As a young child, taking those tests and scraping by with barely getting a 2 or barely getting a 1. It was very devastating and heartbreaking for a young child at 8, 9, 10, and 11 years old, repeatedly failing these tests, spending almost all the extra time that you could possibly get only to just keep failing and failing again. From 3rd grade to the time I graduated high school, I was in the ESC program. So of course, with the standardized testing, I would get pulled aside into separate rooms with maybe 5 to 8 other students that were also in this program. And I would use up almost all the time possible. I would go over the answers, and I would try to logically think it through. And even that didn't help me with passing. Studying didn't help me with passing. It was very emotionally and mentally stressful putting all my effort into trying to pass these tests to only get the results back and see that I failed. I remember getting pulled out of my 5th grade classroom to take the test yet again. I was the very last kid in the room to leave. I spent the full 2 hours in that room, and I remember because everybody else left before me and I was the only kid left, and I was so optimistic to get my test results back. I was like, yes, I'm gonna pass this time. I used all the time. I went through all the answers. A week later, I got my results, and it wasn't what I expected, and I honestly cried a little bit. I was not happy with my results at all. And I remember back in elementary school, all my friends, they would talk about their scores. They'd be like, oh, I got a 3. Oh, I got a 5. And I would just be sitting there listening, and my heart would just keep breaking over and over again. And when they would ask me, I would lie because I felt so ashamed, and I didn't want anybody else to know what I got because it was just a terrible feeling. I can't really describe the emotions that I felt back then. Middle school, it got a little bit better. I wasn't as disappointed or ashamed. It was just kind of, the usual kind of thing, because I was used to failing it. So I was like, there's always next year. And then next year would come, I would fail it again. So, middle school was kind of iffy. So it was a lot different than the young version of me in elementary school. High school, that's when I passed about 3 or 4 of these tests. And things got a little bit better, but not really. So by the time high school rolled around, I was just used to failing it. And I would keep trying, but then again I would keep failing. And I thought that I was going to be stuck in intensive reading forever, but in 10th grade, I finally passed the FSA for that, and I was so, so happy. So I could definitely say from middle school to high school, my mindset just really changed about standardized testing. I don't necessarily agree with it because it really affected me mentally and emotionally. But by the time I was in 7th grade, I started to let it go little by little and not dwell on it. But as a young kid at 8, 9, 10, and 11, standardized testing For me, I think that should be pushed at least till maybe 7th grade or something, because it was just a very hard feeling and obstacle to come over on the inside. So standardized testing is where a kid sits down and takes a recap test on everything that they've learned from the previous year. I don't necessarily agree with it, especially taking it when I was in elementary school. And it can really mess with a kid's mental and emotional state if it's a child like me.